Welcome to my channel. My name is Priska, and in this week's video, I want to go through my first trimester experience. It's seriously mind-blowing how much a woman's body changes in those first 13 weeks when baby is still so tiny. From body changes to cravings, symptoms, emotional lows. It's not all bad though. I experienced some positive symptoms that nobody told me about, and I want to see if you can relate to these too. On that note, let's begin the week by week recap. So I'm 34 years old, and in the past decade, it feels like all of my friends have had at least one baby. And so I feel like I should know more about pregnancy than I do, but this experience really illuminated a lot of areas that I just never asked questions about. One of them is that during the first 2 weeks of your pregnancy, you are not pregnant. That's just one of the many details I'll bring up in this video that maybe I should have known about, but I didn't. So in all humility, I'm sharing with you this first timer experiences. With that said, my personal experience with this pregnancy is that I had this very distinct intuition the day that we made baby. Now, I don't always know exactly when we have our lovey days. I don't track it on a calendar or anything, but it was during the holidays and we were traveling one week, we had company the following week, and so we didn't have a lot of lovey days during that time. So I knew exactly the day that it happened, and it was so weird because that day I was like, I think we made a baby. The only other time this has happened is when I had my first pregnancy that ended in miscarriage, which I talked about in my 2-year journey to getting pregnant. And I'm sorry if it's kind of a downer to bring up miscarriage right now, but it's really colored my experience. I mean, the contrast between that pregnancy and this one, how my body felt through each time. In the last 2 years, I've left all my pants unaltered at the waist because I was expecting to grow a belly soon. And these pants are a really good example of that. I think I got these last summer, and I was so certain that the timing was right for me to be pregnant then that I bought these in a size too big, and someone commented that they look cartoonishly large on me, and they are correct. They do look too large on me because I was planning on growing, but I didn't. So I ended up just wearing them too large, which is probably not the best maternity sense of style. I swapped my HIIT workouts for more gentle yoga to try to decrease the cortisol in my body, which actually worked really good for my mental health, just like bringing me peacefulness all day instead of spiking my cortisol every day. I swapped out heels for low heels or flat shoes because I am so ready for that mom style life. So anyway, when I was 2 weeks pregnant, I had a feeling that we had just made a baby. But after 2 years of hoping to get pregnant, I also felt this very strong fear that it's just going to be another month of I'm going to bleed at the end of the month, and that's how I'll know I'm not pregnant. And that's the ambiguous part of intuition. Like, you can know something deep down is true, but if it doesn't hit the front of your brain, then maybe you don't quite believe it all the way, or you just have such strong doubts about it that you're not sure how to operate. Fear can sound like intuition, and intuition can sound like just hopeful wishing. So over the last couple of years, I just tried to stay prayerful, and that was another roller coaster. Just trying to not behave as neurotic as I felt my brain. And for the first 4 weeks of this pregnancy, I'm pretty sure my husband heard at least multiple times a day, I'm pregnant. No, I'm not. How could I know? I don't know. I guess I'll just wait. I mean, what else am I going to do? Anyway, the end of week 3 is when I started experiencing my first pregnancy symptoms. I didn't really know that's what it was at the time, but hindsight is 2020. So the end of week 3, I felt this small, tight cramp on the right side of my uterus, and it was so sharp that it took my breath away. It didn't last that long. I mean, it did last for maybe a few hours. It felt like the gas bubble from hell, and that's what I thought it was. I was also experiencing some normal PMS symptoms for me, which is just my mood just kind of coming lower and just not being as bubbly as I usually feel. So on one side, my fear was saying,
I'm PMSing, that was a menstrual cramp, I might not ever get pregnant again.
But on the flip side, my intuition was saying,
that's implantation, I'm pregnant, I knew I was pregnant.
P.S. You've never had cramps, so why do you think that's a menstrual cramp? And then my husband was probably saying, can we just tranquilize you until you take a pregnancy test? Then it's week 4. I took a 2-pack of pregnancy tests. One was analog, one was digital. I just wanted to be sure. And it was before the timing of my 28-day cycle. So it was maybe around day 25. The test is supposed to take 3 minutes to deliver the results. After 3 minutes, it's negative. But I couldn't shake off that intuition that I was pregnant. So after 5 minutes, I looked again and it was kind of positive. It was like the 2 lightest pink lines you've ever seen. The digital test had turned off at this point, so I just tossed that one. Those 2 pink lines were so faint that I didn't believe it. Russell believed it, but I still didn't. So we waited a few more days when I would have started my period, and I took 2 more tests, an analog and a digital, and it was immediately positive within seconds. At this point, I am ecstatic. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really pregnant. So then I just keep looking for signs of confirmation that I'm pregnant. And still in week 4, I had implantation bleeding. So I had the implantation cramping a few days before, then I had implantation bleeding. And that totally freaked me out because the first time I got pregnant, I didn't have that. And I don't really spot with my period. I'm either bleeding or I'm not. So with the implantation bleeding, it was just barely there, light spotting. And I'm so emotionally fragile at this point that I just assumed that I was having another miscarriage. So in a desperate panic, I call my doula, I tell her what's going on, and she's like, listen, I don't think this is a big deal, but I will ask the midwives and get a second opinion for you. So she calls me back to say that it's probably just implantation bleeding and just take it easy. I think she is referring to my emotions, but let her know if it gets heavier. It doesn't. That implantation bleeding lasted maybe 36 hours, but I took another pregnancy test because I'm crazy. Then I realized that because of the way the HCG works in your body, like I would still be registering as pregnant on one of these pregnancy tests for days. So the positive result is invalid information. And that really forced me to tune into my own body for confirmation of what I believed was happening. And although my fear was saying you could be having a miscarriage, I just didn't feel like that was happening. I felt like it was right, things are good, and as long as I don't allow my triggers from my past to tell me what is true about my present, then I can stay in tune with my body and know what's going on. And that was another intuition that I had since the very beginning of the pregnancy. It's like God knew that I was going to have these fears, and so He started telling me from the moment I said, I think we made a baby, He started telling me, this is going to be right. You need to get your head around, this is going to be right, this is going to be a healthy pregnancy, it's going to be a healthy baby, and don't let fear steal the joy out of this. So I took to journaling, as I often do, with thoughts that I would be mortified to share with other people. And after writing out my thoughts, my feelings, all those thoughts that were swinging from fear to faith to fear to faith, I realized that I knew all along without the test that I was pregnant, that baby is going to be fine, and I needed to choose what I believe. My second month was the worst month. I mean, I know I'm only in my 4th month, but I'm pretty sure based on other mamas' feedback about their worst months, like the morning sickness of month 2 was the worst month I'm going to have, Lord willing. So I've got my laptop where I jotted down all the symptoms that I would have forgotten about, and I wanted to be really thorough because there are so many different clues of what your body's trying to tell you. So I wanted to share those with you. Okay, week 6, I had the first really strong symptom of pregnancy besides what I've already talked about. I had 3 pimples. They were here, here, and here. I mean, they were all right here. And they were close to a cystic level of acne. So I went down Google holes trying to find out if it's normal. And the article said pregnancy sometimes causes acne. And that's just not that helpful because a woman who is 2 months pregnant is experiencing very different different symptoms from a woman who's 9 months pregnant. So I started searching for, is this normal at the very beginning of pregnancy? And that question wasn't answered in the articles that I read. Then I got a book. This is Mama Natural's week by week guide to pregnancy and childbirth. And this has been such a helpful resource for me. She talks about kind of what's normal, like general experiences. She talks about her personal experience, and she even includes some things that are uncommon experiences, but it happens in pregnancy. So this was really helpful for me. I'm still reading this week by week. The physical symptoms that I started experiencing, the first one was tiredness and fatigue. I started taking naps, and that is extremely rare for me. I typically will take 1 or 2 naps a year, and it's always a result of PMSing. But by week 6, I was napping every day for 2 hours in the middle of the afternoon. Now, luckily, I work from home. I can adjust my schedule as needed, but I do not know how women go to work during this time because I would have been asleep at my desk. The second big symptom that hit all at once in week 6 was all-day nausea. So they call it morning sickness, but for me, it was from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, I was nauseous. And it was pretty strong for weeks 6 through 9. It started to fade in week 10, and then I had a big turning point, which I'll tell you about later. But I had this feeling for about a month that I could puke at any moment now. Luckily, I didn't actually puke, but there are a few things that helped me when I was feeling pukey. So number 1, eating more small, frequent meals. If I had a little bit of food in my stomach, it just kind of cut the nausea by maybe 50%. But if I ever had an empty stomach, it was 100%. So that was helpful. Another thing is drinking peppermint tea. This was more helpful for me than just drinking water. Some women say that water helps them not feel the nausea, but the peppermint tea, just the taste in my mouth, that was a lot better for me than just plain water. Lastly, ginger candy. Now in the past, I've used the brand Gingens. That's a really good one. You kind of want to check the label to see how much sugar is added and if there are any gums, because gums mess up your digestion. But this one just has cane sugar, ginger, and tapioca starch, and it has 3 grams of sugar per piece. So I'm not too worried about it. But just having one of these to suck on helped me not to feel nauseous just while I was eating this. And I would just stick a few of these in every handbag that I had. They came in handy lots of times. And another thing I would put in my handbags are snacks. I never left the house without snacks. This is a Lara bar, and this was my go-to snack. It's got 230 calories, so it's not like one of those Tease 100-calorie bars. This is going to feel quite filling for an hour, maybe 2 hours if you can't eat a meal right away. And then at night, because sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night hungry, and that hunger would make me feel nauseous, I kept these in my bathroom. These are Simple Mills soft baked almond flour nutty banana bread. The Lara bars are just a little bit too strong for me to eat at night because I'm not used to snacking late. These were a little bit more neutral, but those carbs help to settle your belly a little bit more. So for me, these were necessary. These are must-haves through the first trimester of pregnancy. Okay, speaking of digestion, the third symptom I had of pregnancy was that my digestion slowed way down, and it was in week 6. It was all of a sudden. So I had to adjust my eating schedule. For the past 7 years, I have practiced intermittent fasting, which is just when you have a shortened window of eating. I would eat my first meal at 1 p.m. I would eat lunch, and then dinner, and maybe a snack after, which would end at 8. So it's about a 7-hour window. But in week 6, when my digestion slowed, I had to adjust my eating schedule. I was going to bed so full, and that tight stomach was really uncomfortable for me. So I started eating 3 smaller meals instead of 2 larger ones. And after a week of noticing how much this helped with the digestion and the nausea, I stretched out my meals to 5 smaller meals throughout the day. Starting earlier, maybe around 9 o'clock, I'd have a smoothie. I also couldn't eat red meat. Like, I remember one night we had a steak, and steak is one of my favorite meals, and it took me until, I don't know, midday the next day to feel like that had digested through my stomach. It was very uncomfortable, and I noticed that with hamburger meat as well. So we use bison, and we have in the past eaten a pound of bison almost daily. This is our go-to make from home meal. And I noticed that the bison was giving me problems with digestion. It's just like too hard to digest. I started eating more chicken, which in the past, chicken is probably my least favorite meat. And now it's the thing that I eat the most. So there's a lot of changes that I had to work through with that immediately slower digestion. But hopefully by making this video, I'll remember that for the next time I'm pregnant. The other symptom that was just the cutest symptom I've ever had is that I had extreme gas. Not bloating. I used to call gas and bloating the same thing, but bloating is water weight. You can literally measure it on a scale when you step on a scale and you're heavier from eating fried foods the day before. That's water weight. And we all know what gas is like. Now, I've experienced extreme gassiness one time before, and it's when I had an inflamed digestive tract and I started going to my functional medicine doctor to heal that. But that was years before, and it did inform how I reacted to this. So I stopped eating some of the sort of reactive foods that I have, like extra spicy foods, raw tomatoes, raw garlic. I love raw garlic, but it doesn't love me. So that helped, but there was still a lot of lingering gas. And this is where I probably made a big mistake that I hope not to make again. I was eating a lot of fast food. I am not a fast food person. I like natural whole foods. I like cooking from home because I know that the ingredients are the purest, highest quality. But I was nauseous and I had these very specific cravings. A lot of times it was fried chicken or French fries. I had these very specific cravings. And when mama has a craving, mama wants only that and nothing else. My sweet patient husband had to run out and get me fast food so many times. Bless him. But the issue that I have with fast foods is that they are soaked in inflammatory seed oils, which fudges up your digestive tract, and for me really causes a lot of that gas. So my advice is not to engage in this type of eating, but I did, and we'll resolve that later in the video. Another symptom that I had very early on, week 6, was that my breasts were extremely tender. Now, one of my PMS symptoms is that I get tender breasts, but never anything like this. I mean, they were so tender. I started wearing a bra to sleep, and I hate wearing bras. That lasted for a few weeks. My boobs just grew a lot during that time. Okay, moving on from boob talk. Another symptom I had was very oily, clogged pores. So I mentioned that cystic acne. That was my first big symptom of pregnancy. And this started again, all of a sudden in week 6. I had to start washing my face in the mornings and at night, which usually I only wash at night. I had to switch all my skincare and makeup products from oil-based to water-based because I have historically had very dry skin. I had no idea what it was like having oily skin. But even with the facial care routine changing and me washing my pillowcases every other night, it didn't help because it was the food. But we'll talk about that in week 10. Okay, a big symptom that I think is fairly common in your first month of pregnancy is heightened senses. Now, the first heightened sense that I had was that food tasted twice as good. This is the best symptom of pregnancy. Nobody told me about this, but I cannot stop raving about how good food tastes. And Russell and I will eat the same thing. And he says, well, it's good, but it's no better than the previous time we had it. And to me, good food tastes amazing. Right along with that, I have a heightened sense of smell, which I think a lot of women experience. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you have a heightened sense of taste and smell and other senses. So smells are stronger, which can be good or bad. It's very good when it's a food that you want to eat. It smells so good. It's very bad when you walk into the gym and every person smells like BO. Paired with nausea, that's no bueno. The third heightened sense I had was of hearing. Loud sounds tick me off, especially incessant beeping sounds, which is probably a good time to mention that week 6 was when I started to get really irritable, and that lasted for a few weeks. I know from the comments that some people But I did some research on this and learned that the reason why pregnant women have these heightened senses is for protection. It's an evolutionary advantage. So back in the day, way back in the day, we would need to know if something alarming and dangerous was coming towards us. So we had that heightened sense of sound. And we would need to know if something toxic or poisonous was near us. So we have that heightened sense of smell. And we would need to know if we ate something that was poisonous. So we have that heightened sense of taste. And it's really fascinating to me how God created all these little details, and we just call them symptoms, but they're so purposeful. And I've just really been enjoying every week noticing these changes and trying to do research and figure out, why do these changes happen? There's got to be some kind of point to them, right? Okay, other small symptoms that I only remember because I wrote them down. I'll go through these quick. I started having hyper-realistic dreams that seem to span over days of time. I'm very curious if anyone else has experienced this. I am a big dreamer. I have dreamt my entire life. Probably, I would say 3 to 5 nights a week I have vivid dreams. But these dreams are so much more realistic. I can't tell if I'm in the dream or not. And that's been happening every day. My pelvic area feels slightly achy, and I get a little bit of relief from practicing yoga, but only during the session. Sleepiness comes on really strong. For month 2, I was in bed by 9 o'clock every night, and once or twice a day, I was taking naps. Another symptom is that I altogether lost my taste for coffee in week 6. That is a near 30-year habit that I've had that faded in 3 days. The 3rd day, Russell handed it to me and it smelled like burnt tar, and I have not had coffee since. Now, talking to my functional medicine doctor, I was planning on drinking coffee through the pregnancy because I've drank it for so long, and I drink 1 to 2 shots a day. That's it. And although there are so many mixed reviews and studies on the effects of coffee on the baby, there's nothing conclusive, and I really trust my functional medicine doctor. But she told me that since I've drank it for so long, my body is used to that. There's no reason to stop drinking that. Just don't drink like 4 shots a day, which was easy to do. But I lost my taste for it, so I took that as a sign as I'm not supposed to be drinking it. That's fine. And the last main symptom from month 2 is that I started getting really clingy. You don't know my relationship with my husband, but we are generally always together. He works 2 rooms over. I work from this room. We go to the gym together. We go grocery shopping together. We go on walks together. We eat all our meals together. We are generally together a lot. But in the 2nd month of pregnancy, I was so clingy, I was annoying myself. Like a teenager that doesn't want her boyfriend to go to the grocery store without her, that was me. It was a problem. But I also did some research about this and found out that that is a natural biological response to getting pregnant, is that you want to be so close to your partner. And that could be an evolutionary advantage because they are bigger and stronger than you and can protect you from like lions and bears. Now, in today's time, I don't need protection from lions and bears, but it's natural, okay? All these symptoms lasted into week 10, which I will get to in the next chapter. But before I do, this was also the time that I started telling just a few select people that I was pregnant. In the last video, I showed you our pregnancy announcement to our family, but I left out a very important detail that would change the rest of my pregnancy.
Oh my God. That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, I have something to tell y'all as well.
What?
I'm also pregnant.
Are you serious?
Ask her how far along. I'm 8 weeks.
What? That is wild!
Look at that, Russell, same time.
Great. It's so I know.
So yeah, my sister-in-law is pregnant and she is 2 weeks ahead of me. So now I no longer feel like the center of attention, which I kind of like. You would think someone with a YouTube channel wants to be the center of attention, and that's not really why I have a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel because I want to provide information that I feel like isn't being shared, and I don't mind taking stage for that, but I don't generally like to be the center of attention in life. And it just feels like a lot of pressure. Like, we are the first in our family to be starting a new generation, the first baby that has been in the family in 18 years. And so it feels like a lot of pressure, not from anyone in my family, just from myself to myself. But now Tori and I are both starting the new generation of our family. We have babies due around the same time. It's just really nice to have someone to share this experience with that is going through the same things, and I can share my weirdo symptoms and observations with. And feeling this sisterhood of sharing pregnancy, not only with her, but with so many of my friends who have been pregnant and they're giving me advice and details of their pregnancy, that support makes all the difference in the world. And that's one of the best aspects of being pregnant. Okay, moving along. Week 6 through 10, I had all the same symptoms, the nausea, the fatigue, etc., etc. Week 8, something that was pretty important is that I had my first official midwife appointment and my first official doula appointment. So I actually had my first unofficial appointment with the midwife in week 4, but it was more of an interview process. It was like getting to know each other and seeing if we jive both in personality and in the views of birth and who's making the decisions about it. We jived well, obviously, because I hired her. She also gave natural alternatives for remedies I've heard of, which I was really happy with because I do try to live more naturally minded. And she gave a lot of information, so I felt properly informed to make the right decisions, and I knew she was going to support my decisions going forward. The doula appointment was similar. I felt very heard, cared for, understood. Now, I'm in a rare position. I'm very lucky because my doula is a friend of mine and she knows me really well. And that to me is such a huge advantage in delivery because from what I can tell, you're not exactly speaking full sentences. You need people to kind of be able to read you, and she knows me, so it's going to just add that level of comfort and support throughout the delivery. It was really nice getting my birth team set up in month 2. It's a little bit early. I think most people do it in month 3, probably before the end of the first trimester. But because I was anticipating getting pregnant for so long, I was able to think through all those questions and secure the right birth team that was going to support me well. Month 3 was when everything shifted in one day. Before we get there, week 9, I was having all the symptoms that I've talked about, but also I started having shortness of breath. It felt impossible to walk several flights of stairs. Even going on a walk on flat ground, I couldn't talk and walk at the same time, which is honestly one of my favorite hobbies. So that was difficult. Then be sure to watch that one next. And there was one day that I took 3 naps. Week 9, I also realized I was emotionally exhausted. So I spent the previous few days telling family I'm pregnant, and those are really happy, positive conversations, and yet it still takes a little bit of energy out of you. And when you're already fatigued, you don't have a lot of energy to give. So I did it slowly. I have a lot of loved ones, a lot of friends and family, and I wanted to tell people individually. On top of that, I had my first ultrasound, and I didn't realize how anxious I was for this ultrasound. I thought I was just excited. It was hard to tell my emotions at this point because I was so tired. But as they're doing the ultrasound, I realized that I was sweating. Like, I was sweating from anxiety. And when I heard the heartbeat, I just started crying immediately. Like, it was such a beautiful and pure sound to hear baby's heartbeat, and it was so good to reassure that baby's okay, I'm not having a miscarriage. Again, fighting that battle between fear and faith, listening to my intuition, listening to fear, like I was still kind of dealing with that. I would say now I am in week 15 and I feel much more secure, but those first 14 weeks, it was like every week that ticked up, could breathe a little bit lighter because my pregnancy wasn't over. And then another thing that was emotionally exhausting is that a close family friend was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and it was just so out of the blue. just never expected this person to have this happen, but I'll talk about that later. So although most people reacted very positively, I think this is something that isn't really talked about. And I know this is not a unique experience I have, but not everyone is going to be happy for your news. There will be a family member, a friend, a coworker who's jealous or has gotten used to your relationship being a certain way with you not being a mom and doesn't like that that's going to change. There's just all kinds of things that are happening in people personally in the way that they react. And it's not about you, but it does feel so personal because you're sharing this very vulnerable experience with them. So I had a family member in particular who acted like such a radiant jerk. I was completely shocked. In the moment, I didn't even know how to react. And that was really emotionally exhausting because I stewed on it for a few days, maybe 2 days afterwards. I felt such rage that this person would try to steal the joy out of something I've been hoping for so long. And Russell really came through with good advice. He advised me to quit letting a family label determine my relationship with someone. If they aren't acting like family, if they haven't acted like family in over a decade, that doesn't make them family. They can't use that label against me to try to guilt me into having this relationship that isn't real. Now, this is the umpteenth time he's told me this before about this person, and I didn't listen. But feeling all this hurt and anger while being pregnant, knowing my baby is feeling the emotions that I do, they're getting the cortisol that I get, well, that really clarified some things for me. I have to protect this baby that is under my care. And although I wish I would just say, well, I need to protect myself too, I just haven't done that, but I do feel so much more protective over my baby. I wrote a little memo from me to me, CC anyone who needs to hear it. If someone stresses you, you don't have to keep having a relationship with them. You don't have to tell them your happy news. It doesn't matter how they're related to you. It doesn't matter if they'll find out. Let them. Your responsibility is to steward yourself, your emotions, your joy, your body. So take care of yourself the best you know how. And I wish I didn't have to say that, but it's something that I really need to hear. And just talking to other women who have been pregnant, they've felt some stress over telling some people, and they've had bad reactions. The people who are really my friends are going to be happy for my news and not feel like that's robbing them of something. Because for me, at least, the thing that helped me to not become bitter and hopeless during my infertility journey is that I didn't ever want someone else to not be pregnant because I wasn't pregnant. I want everyone that wants to be pregnant to get pregnant. I wish it were easier for all of us. So I was very diligent about confronting any type of jealous thoughts. And I realized like my friends who are healthy and able to support me in this pregnancy, they're in the same position. If they've had loss, if they've had infertility, they're just going to be happy to see someone else doing what they want to be doing too. So again, you don't owe anybody your happy news. Don't share your happy news out of guilt. Share your happy news out of love. And on that note, let's switch to something positive. Week 10, day 4, this is the day that everything changed. So from weeks 6 through week 10, day 3, I had the nausea, I had the fatigue, I had the irritability, I had the cravings. Week 10, day 4, everything shifted. I woke up feeling not nauseous and not tired. I wasn't fully myself, but let's say I was at 90% compared to 80% the week prior. Me at 100% is very chipper. I'm excited to work. I'm very playful. So I wasn't there, but I was starting to feel a lot more like myself. This is the first day I also didn't need a nap. I didn't have ravenous cravings all day. I ate semi-normal. My diet was back to natural foods, but I was still eating 5 times a day, and that continued for a few weeks. I did have this early indication that I'd feel better. Over the previous few days, I was talking to the midwife and the doula, and I talked about my eating habits and how it was making me feel a lot worse, but I didn't know what to do because I had these strong cravings. And at one point, my doula very gently asked, "Have you noticed that your acne started around the time you started eating fast food?" I laughed so hard. Yes, actually precisely that time. So I don't even know if the acne was because of pregnancy or because of the food, or if it was because of pregnancy and only got really bad because of the food. I don't know. But I knew that that feeling of ravenous cravings was fading and I could start to eat my normal foods again. So the night before my good day, week 10, day 4 will go down in history for me as my first good day. The night before that, I talked to Russell and I said, I'm going to start eating well again tomorrow. So I think that some part of me knew that things were shifting and I was getting out of that hyperhormonal, out of control kind of feeling. Also, during week 10, I had a 5-day stretch of not needing a nap, which, spoiler alert, did not last, but it was nice for 5 days. I started eating better, I started sleeping better, I started feeling better, I started looking better, my skin was clear, my hair wasn't oily anymore. I've never had oily skin until month 2 of pregnancy, and the gas and bloating went away. Weirdly enough, I actually looked less pregnant in week 10 than I looked in week 7 because of how I was eating. In fact, I gained 10 pounds in the second month of pregnancy, which is not healthy. 10 out of 10 do not recommend that route, but I gained 10 pounds in the second month of pregnancy and I lost 2 in week 10. Now that's likely water weight from the bloating from eating junk foods, but still I felt so much better. Okay, I want to talk about weight gain. For some people, this is a major topic around pregnancy. Of the 20 or so people that I've told I'm pregnant, about half have responded at some point in the conversation about weight gain in their pregnancies. But when things are said like, are you worried about gaining weight? I have to remember that, again, someone's response to you is almost entirely how they're feeling on the inside about themselves, not really to do with you. It's not, hey, are you worried about weight gain because you're overweight? It's, I'm worried about weight gain for myself. Unless they specifically tell you, I'm worried you're gaining too much weight, they're probably worried for themselves. So don't take someone else's projected fear as one of your own original thoughts. You don't have to absorb someone else's fear into your thought process. And you've seen throughout my videos, I like talking about body shape and size because it's something that has very little healthy, beautiful, positive conversation around, and yet we all think and talk about it. So I try to just bring a good perspective to it. So when someone says, are you worried about weight gain? I use it as an opportunity to respond, I'm not worried about weight gain because I am planning to gain weight. That is the healthy thing to do when you're pregnant. And just try to reframe that conversation from, oh no, you're gaining weight, to what is the purpose of gaining weight when you're pregnant? That doesn't mean I don't have any worries about weight gain. I just think the conversation a lot of times is unhealthy, even though it pretends to be healthy. When I gained that 10 pounds in my second month of pregnancy, I was worried about that. That is not a healthy amount of weight gain in your second month of pregnancy. Also, I have seen women with gestational diabetes gain so much weight and just feel so terrible through their pregnancies. So it was something that I was concerned about. I talked to my midwife and my doula about it. And when I had the routine testing in week 8, they did a pre-screening for gestational diabetes, and I am not likely to have that. So I just realized this is not a biological defect. This is something that I have total control of because I've been eating that way. So I need to change my eating habits. But worry, stewing over weight gain, like that doesn't help you actually change your habits. All that does is create kind of toxic thoughts and conversations, and that's what needs to change. So I did some research on what is the healthy amount of weight to gain during the pregnancy. And this is something that I feel like every pregnant woman should know. A healthy amount of weight gain is 25 to 35 pounds. And they say 25 pounds if you're heavier and 35 pounds if you're lighter. Now, I started pregnancy at 150 pounds, which is about average. So I expect to gain 30 pounds. But the idea that I'm gaining 30 pounds of fat is completely false. And if there is a fear in your head that the 30 pounds you gain from pregnancy is fat, girl, that ain't it. In this chart, it shows a breakdown of where all that weight gain is distributed. So 1 to 2 pounds is in your breasts. I feel like I've already had that. The baby is on average 6 to 8 pounds. The placenta is 1 to 2 pounds. So you birth both of those things immediately. The uterus is 1 to 2 pounds because it's stretching into that giant balloon shape. The amniotic fluid is 2 to 3 pounds. Again, not keeping that. Your blood is 3 to 4 pounds, which will go back to normal after pregnancy. Your body fluids are 3 to 4 pounds, and your protein and fat storage is 8 to 10 pounds. So yes, you'll gain about 10 pounds of fat. But then I looked into what is the purpose of that, and it's actually very purposeful. I mean, all of these body changes are very purposeful. The fat storage is required for the nutrients in breastfeeding. So gaining that fat is actually really important. Of course, we don't want to gain 100 pounds of fat. Nobody wants that. But that 10 pounds of fat that you can expect to gain through a healthy pregnancy, that is vital for baby. So I'd like to shift the conversation from, are you worried about gaining weight, to what is the healthy amount of weight to gain? And on top of that, what is the weight for? That way it's not fear-based thinking, it's healthy thinking. And if, like me, in month 2, you realize you're gaining too much weight too quickly, you can make changes, not worry about it, but actually make changes to have a healthier pregnancy. Hopefully that helps someone else. I hope this conversation just continues to shift over time. Week 11, I had the energy to be more reflective. I'm thinking about life more with my newborn baby, their toddler years, their childhood playfulness. Russell is talking about how he's looking forward to holding his baby, and oh my gosh, that totally melts my heart. It actually makes me giddy. It gives me the energy that I've been missing. Oh, I wrote down, I feel so loved and supported by him. He's been very gracious to me through pregnancy, trying to understand as best he can, listening a lot, and just serving my every need. My cravings have mostly gone away, and what I want to eat is good, healthy, natural foods. I've taken naps the past 3 days, so we'll see what happens with that. Turns out I just keep taking naps. But moving on to the last part of the first trimester. So it seems like there's not a uniform decision on where the trimesters are divided. Some people say weeks 1 through 12 are the first trimester. My midwife uses 1 through 13, so that's what I'm going to use. But in this next month, I experienced some things through week 13 and 14 that I'm just going to group together, even though 14 is technically in the second trimester. While weeks 6 through 10 or 11 were the difficult physical times of my pregnancy, weeks 12 through 14 were the real emotional low. In week 12, I got news that my childhood best friend Amber, her mother, whom we affectionately call Momac, she passed away of cancer, and it was rapid. It was 3 weeks from her diagnosis until when she passed. And I had a really hard time accepting her death as a reality because, I mean, last time I saw her, she was vibrant. She's someone who I would want to be as healthy as at her age. And now she's gone. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. So I wasn't there for her passing, but gratefully I felt a little bit better, and I was able to travel out to her celebration of life. It was so hard, so beautiful, so hard. Momac is the woman who taught me that I'm worthy of love. She's the one who showed me that what God says about me, that I'm worthy of love. She's the one who on earth has shown me that. She was extremely loving and open-hearted and gracious and compassionate. I've never really shared my upbringing on this channel, but it was rough. I did not feel worthy of love growing up. And when I became best friends with Amber and her mom, Momac, kind of adopted me as one of her children, I just felt loved. And Momac was also a huge prayer warrior. She's the one who really taught me about prayer, and not because she ever instructed me, but because I watched her. And another thing that I will never forget from her is that food is a love language, and it's one that is universally spoken. Making a homemade meal for someone who is going through something emotionally, that is so loving, and they feel that. Whether you host them at your home or you bake something to give someone, they feel that love. And she is the one who taught me that. So for her to pass as I'm pregnant with my first child, and she is the person I would ask for parenting advice from, like, that's been really, really hard. And in a way, I think, what a blessing that I've gotten to learn so closely from her for so many years. But on the other hand, and I think a lot of people think this when their parents pass, I wasn't ready for her to go. She was so young, she was so healthy and vibrant and ready for this next chapter of life, being a grandmother. So not having her just feels very wrong. But I'm trying to keep her memory alive and just think about how loving and affirming she was to me, that even when I was having my most screw up late teens, early 20 days, she wouldn't tell me that I was a screw up. She would say, I know you're doing your best. I know you're gonna figure this out. Let's talk it out. And of course, cook me some food. And I hope that my children get from me that same loving, caring, encouraging feeling that I get from Mamak. And this is her necklace. So Mamak absolutely loved the color red. I mean, the way that y'all see me obsessed with the color pink is a fraction of how much she loved the color reds. So I'm just very grateful that Amber let me have this necklace from her, and I was not her only heart daughter. I was not the only person that relied on her for support and love. And she has left such a legacy of kindness and love and prayerfulness. She will not be forgotten. And that was a beautiful thing to experience with the family. So after that, I flew home, and the next day I woke up with a cold. From my research, I've learned that a cold is sometimes the first symptom that you're pregnant. Evidently, it's somewhat common to get a cold early on in pregnancy because your immune system has to dampen down to not reject the foreign material of the baby. So you're more likely to get a cold. I ended up getting a cold on the plane ride home, and that lasted only a couple of days, thankfully, because I stayed in bed for the whole time. Of course, I'm still coughing and sneezing for a couple weeks after, but the bad symptoms, the fever, like that only lasted a couple days, thankfully. And I was also weirdly thankful for this cold because after that really intensely emotional time, I really needed alone time to process all my emotions and feel physically better from not taking a nap for 4 days in a row. The cold kind of forced me to do that, so I just took it as a sign I need to diligently rest for the next few days. That concludes my first trimester experience, and if it feels like it's been a winding roller coaster, well, at least I was honest. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to my channel because I'll keep talking about second and third trimester pregnancy and some pregnancy style videos I'm excited about. And if you haven't seen my 2-year journey to getting pregnant, then I recommend that you watch that one next. I'll see you very soon, and until then, take care.